I've always been curious who the Indigenous Australians are that managed to get their names on street signs and suburbs in the Sydney area. It's a shame that these people aren't taught about in school, and yet their names are plastered on maps and metal signs, with their story fading into history. The area I live in has many streets that have some sort of Aboriginal origin, without even knowing who these people are, or even how to properly pronounce their name for that matter. So it's time to resurface the history and discover the achievements that led to their acknowledgement. First off, Ballindella. The story of Ballindella begins with a man named Thomas Mitchell, a surveyor and explorer known for his work in cataloguing the inner southeastern parts of Australia. These surveys consisted of 4 expeditions, first of which was performed in 1831 on an alleged river known as the Kinder River, possibly flowing into the Murray-Darling system, which had yet to be mapped. His second expedition was performed in 1835 to investigate the path that the Darling River led and to where it joined with the Murray River. However, his plans were thwarted by a hostile tribe, which forced his party to turn back at around Menindee Lake. And then on his third expedition, in March 1836, with the goal of surveying the lower Darling River and back up through the Murray River back to Sydney via Yass. His expedition led him towards the Lachlan River, all the way down to the Murray-Darling Delta. On the 2nd of May, an Aboriginal widow known as Turundray and her 4-year-old daughter Ballindella from the Muthi tribe joined the expedition as a guide, possibly around the area now known as Oxley. Not much happened to Ballindella until the return to Sydney, where she was placed under the care of Thomas Mitchell by Turundray due to a crippling injury that Ballindella had endured on the expedition, which was some sort of cart accident. She then learned to read and write. She then disappeared into history until 1952, where Ellen Granger wrote an article in the Sydney Morning Herald concluding with a question, "What happened to Ballindella?" A woman wrote back to Ellen, stating that she had become a nurse and was nursing the woman's mother, and was living in the Hawkesbury region at the time. There was no other significant information other than that, as records weren't in place at the time of her death, so there were no records of her final resting place. However, it's most certainly in the Hawkesbury Valley. However, a road in Mangami'bangawarra, just west of Parramatta City, was named after her. And a rather notable Indigenous Australian, Bennelong, a member of Wangal clan, located in what is now Strathfield. He was known to have many ties with the Wallumbdengal clan, which is in the now Ryde area, and the Burramatagal clan, which is now Parramatta. And his sisters Warrawir and Karangarang married important members of the aforementioned clans to gain political influence for Bennelong. Somewhere he married a woman named Burrabuji, who was a member of the Camaragal clan, which occupied the North Sydney and Manly area. They had 2 children, both dying at a young age, unfortunately. Bennelong was captured by Arthur Phillip at the age of 25 in 1789, under the instructions of King George III, in order to establish relations with the Indigenous population, as many other captured individuals were met by smallpox and died. Bennelong was described by Phillip as a man of good stature, stoutly made, and bold, intrepid countenance. He stayed a capture for 6 months, and then escaped, later contacting Phillip as a free man, and organised a meeting with Phillip. At this meeting, Phillip was speared in the shoulder by an unknown Indigenous man. Bennelong maintained a good relation, and later learned English. The governor graciously built Bennelong a hut in 1790 on what became now known as Bennelong Point. In 1792, Bennelong and another Aboriginal man named Yamerawan was invited to visit England. This will place these two as the first Indigenous Australians to visit England, It is unknown if these two were introduced to King George III, as there were no direct evidence of the happening. They did, however, visit many sites in England, the Tower of London and St Paul's Cathedral, to name a few. Yamerra soon fell ill and resided in the house of Edward Kent, where they met Thomas Townshend, also known as Lord Sydney, who held many important cabinet seats in the second half of the 18th century, which was honoured by the two cities named after him, Sydney, New South Wales, Australia, and one I didn't even know about, Sydney, Nova Scotia, Canada. Unfortunately, Yamerra died due to a chest infection, and Bennelong's health also deteriorated, so he was sent back to Sydney along with George Bass, a surgeon on HMAS Reliance, in 1795. Upon his return, he returned to the respected position among the colony, as well as his position in his clan, and ended up as a leader of a 100-strong clan, living at Kissing Point. In 1796 he wrote a letter thanking Phillips for the care he was given in England, and asking for some handkerchiefs and stockings. He died in January 1813 and was buried in the orchard of the brewer James Squire, who was an apparent great friend of Bennelong and his clan. His legacy remains in Bennelong Park in Putney, Sydney, near where Bennelong died, as well as the federal parliament having the seat of Bennelong, and of course Bennelong Point, the location of the Sydney Opera House.